Alright guys, so the most important thing when it comes to using a jerkbait is retrieving that lure with your rod and not your reel. The only time you're going to use your reel is to reel up the slack after each jerk. And you can do 2 jerks, you can sometimes do 2 to 3 jerks before you reel up your slack, but the most important thing is that you're using your rod to retrieve the lure and not your reel. The reason that's important is because the jerks is what makes the lure appear as, gives it that erratic presentation, bouncing back and forth, and it gives it that presentation, as if it's a dying minnow or a dying shad, which is exactly what a jerkbait is designed to do. Every time you jerk it, point your rod tip back at your lure. Jerk, pause, reel in the slack. What that's doing when you point your rod back at your lure, that's giving that line the maximum amount of slack between your rod and the lure. The slack is important because it's during that slack is when the lure will float to the side or it'll float upward, and it'll actually look like a dying minnow or a dying shad. The most common mistake people will make when they use a jerkbait is they like to jerk and reel at the same time. And basically what's happening when you do that is you're not taking advantage of how the jerkbait was originally designed and why it was designed the way it was. And so, yes, you might catch fish that way, but you're going to greatly increase your chances, and you're going to be using the jerkbait much more effective by doing the jerks, leaving slack line, giving it a pause, and continuing to retrieve that lure without reeling it in. Now, one thing that you can vary when it comes to using a jerkbait is the amount of time between each jerks. I've found that in colder times of the year or colder conditions, they seem to like a longer pause between each jerk. In the warmer conditions, warmer water, they seem to like a smaller amount of time between each jerk, and they like you to actually retrieve it much faster, because I guess they're more active and they're more in the chasing type of mood, or it just looks more natural to those type of conditions. As long as you're retrieving your lure with only your rod and with jerks, and then reeling up the slack as you go, you really can't mess it up. I mean, you can do 2 quick jerks. You can do a jerk, wait 3 seconds, do another jerk, wait another couple seconds, do another jerk, as long as you're not reeling it like it's a crankbait. Because the whole design of the jerkbait is supposed to represent a dying minnow or a dying shad. By you jerking it, causing it to bounce in a different direction, bounce in another direction, and that slack in the line is very important, because that's what allows that lure to appear as if it's given up, or it's coming to its final little struggle. And that's, bass are opportunists, so they're gonna take that situation, take advantage of that situation, because that's what bass do. Watch your line during those pauses, because that's usually when you're gonna get those bites. They're gonna bite that lure whenever it's the easiest and it's in its most vulnerable state, when you have that slack line. Another effective way to use a jerkbait is to actually use it just like a topwater. So yeah, you're just going to cast it out, and it'll be floating on top of the water, and all you're going to do is just give it little taps, little jerk taps, or little tugs, however you want to call that. And you're just pulling it enough just to barely move the lure. And what it's doing is it's making the lure look like it's a minnow that's just floated to the top of the water, and it's just having little nerve jerks or whatever. A lot of people use a jerkbait like that. I've used it that way. I've caught a lot of fish using it like that.